How you doing? I have a daily word from Psalm 147. When I read Psalm 147, the Lord lifts up the humble. He casts the wicked to the ground. So I like to think of this word humble. The word humble in the Bible is really interesting because it's got a lot of different words to describe, like in the Hebrew language or even in the Greek language, to describe what it means. I would say there's two main ways of thinking about humility or being humble. One of them has to do with your hierarchy in the society, like are you poor, the lowly, the poor, the outcast, and so forth. That connects to a word that has to do kind of with stature or economics and so forth, humble. Then humility has to do with like ego or pride, and ego is that part of us. In that deals with things that we would call humility. Now, one of the best resources that I ever read on humility and being you know being guided by the scripture on humility was the book The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness by Tim Keller. Now, I don't recall if this was a sermon that he preached or a sermon series, but it's just great. And I have this in front of me, and I wanted to read a little bit because he first of all he brings up C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity, and when he's talking about humility, he calls it gospel dash humility. So gospel humility. Lewis said, if you were to meet a truly humble person, we would never come away from meeting them thinking they were humble. They would not always they would not be always telling us they were a nobody, because a person who keeps saying they are a nobody is actually a self-obsessed person. The thing we would remember from meeting a truly gospel humble person is how much they seem to be totally interested in us. Because the essence of gospel humility is not thinking more of myself or thinking less of myself. It is thinking of myself less. And Tim Keller goes on using this term self-forgetfulness quite often. And so the way that he describes it, Keller describes this gospel humility, here's one way. It's not needing to think about myself, not needing to connect things with myself, not needing, it is an end to thoughts such as, I'm in this room with these people. Does that make me look good? Do I want to be here? True gospel humility means I stop connecting every experience, every conversation with myself. In fact, I stop thinking about myself. The freedom of self forgetfulness, the blessed rest that only self forgetfulness brings. So, that self forgetfulness is a term that continues to follow me when I'm thinking about humility, and how challenging it is not to compare yourself to someone else, not to even compare yourself. I mean, even though that's Jordan Peterson's, rule of four, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to whom someone else is today, right? But I not with this gospel humility, you're not even comparing yourself to who you were yesterday. So there's all these different ways we could say this. Think more of God, less of yourself, and it's not thinking less of yourself. I like that. How Keller says it. It's thinking of yourself less. And then he talks about the ego as puffed up part of your body. Okay, he's using this metaphorically. But any part of your body that's puffed up, guess what? When it comes into contact with anything else, there's pain. So if you have a swollen toe, you know it's there. If you have a swollen finger, you know it's there. Elbow, let's say you hurt your elbow and it's swollen, you know it's there. But if you don't have an injury where there's swelling and you're bumping into things and so forth, you don't even know it's there. So Keller compares that to the ego. When the ego gets all puffed up, then it's very easy to, boop, hurt it. It's very easy to be hurt. That's a really, really powerful image. I'd like to think about that for about 10 years. Keep that in mind. Just look at it like a big balloon, put, say, an ego on it, and that's in me. That's part of me. And is that swollen up so that it's going to respond to any little doot? All right. Humility.